Hi, welcome to Up Your Nerd Cred. Did you used to know everything that was happening in the Marvel and DC universes? Did finding out that some superheroes are from Marvel and some are from DC blow your mind? Has keeping track of everything that's happening there? And then realizing that we're only talking about the comics universes and not the cinematic ones, and that all these different universes, with all their own multiversal crises, have gotten a little bit out of hand? Well, don't worry. Up Your Nerd Cred is here to talk about the gods cosplaying as men, the men cosplaying as gods, and how much the cinematic universes are really leaving out. At the end of each episode, you'll hopefully know a little bit more than you did and can up your nerd cred. I'm your casual nerd host, Cece. I am excited to announce that I have produced produce. I actually had a surprise pepper pop out from the pepper plant that I didn't even think was growing anything anymore. And honestly, I'm a little bit scared to touch it because what if it's too soon? It's so cute. It's so green. It's so tiny. Anyway, yay, pepper! Also, comment if you want me to post a picture of the pretty pepper plant. The pretty picture of the pretty pepper plant. And
That's the face of somebody who's very proud about what they just said. And I'm your prodigal expert nerd host, AM Diaz, making his less than dramatic return after an extended hiatus after a certain red-hued mystic confused me with a variant of Joe Locke. I'm here to let my comic nerd hyperfixation talk run amok for your entertainment or annoyance, depending on what the comment section says this week.
yeah, so what this means is that he ain't new to it. He's true to it. And is also, as you said, our resident expert nerd.
Expert.
So I'll be asking him all kinds of burning questions each week. Now, I think the first question, as always, should be, what are we nerding out about this week? Now, just remember, listeners, you can nerd out about all kinds of things. It does not just have to be about heroes and villains, okay? Your favorite TV show has layers. There is a whole bunch of stuff that is happening for your policy wonk friends. And honestly, even if you try to mute the Taylor and Travis engagement thing, unfortunately, it's still going to end up in your feed, regardless of your opinions on it. So, outside of that, and what are we nerding out about?
Taylor and no, I'm actually nerding about the new season of Peacemaker. After 3 years, we finally have it back, but James Gunn has updated it for the new DC universe.
Yes.
So he has officially gone through and essentially he basically pulled a Phoenix. He burned away what doesn't work, but kept everything that can work and is helping it grow.
I don't know if Phoenix is the best example because that Phoenix is kind of crazy, but okay.
No, that's
Does it continue to be crazy?
That's the whole purpose of the Phoenix. The Phoenix destroys what doesn't work and creates what needs to work. It's not just crazy. And that's what James Gunn is doing. He has kind of burned away all the stuff that was kind of just failing about the DCEU. So the Snyder version of the Justice League is gone, replaced with the new DCU Justice Gang.
Of the Justice Gang, and also Harley Quinn, who likes to go ahead and save her own self. But yes, please continue.
Well, Harley, unfortunately, may not exist as we knew her in this new universe.
No.
Well, I mean, James Gunn has been able to keep as much as he can, but there's also stuff that they're going to maybe want to redo. You know, Superman, for example, is not the Man of Steel version. He is our new 2025 Superman. We have kept the Suicide Squad did happen, but might not have happened exactly the way it did in the movie. So whether or not Harley was part of that team has not been defined yet.
But I need Margot.
And we all love Margot, but unfortunately with this new reboot, unless James Gunn flat out says it happened, or it happens in one of their TV shows or movies, there's no guarantee. Well, it's the unfortunate thing of when you do a reboot, especially one where you're trying to keep a few of the old things. So as far as the new universe exists, Suicide Squad is continuity for the most part. Season 1 of Peacemaker is still continuity for the most part. Blue Beetle may still be in continuity. So I know a lot of people didn't see
Interesting.
that, but Blue Beetle may have still been in continuity because James Gunn loved that movie,
Mhm.
and he does feel like would fit in with the new continuity.
Okay. Alright.
And then
So
after that, it's anything that's come out recently. So Creature Commandos,
mhm.
Man
Wait,
of
what?
Steel. Yeah, Creature Commandos, the animated TV show that was on HBO. That is a direct sequel to the Suicide Squad and prequel to Man of Steel and or not Man of Steel, Superman and Peacemaker.
Good to know. If you have not watched Creature Commandos, go catch up on that. And by you, I mean me. But what else? Like, cause like what? How far behind am I on stuff?
Well, like I say, not too far. Just there's only been really those three things so far that have come out: Creature Commandos, Superman, and Peacemaker 2.
Okay.
So, I mean, if you've seen the Suicide Squad or Peacemaker season 1, you're good, and you've seen Man of Steel,
Yeah,
you're
of
behind on
course.
Creature Commandos, and, by the point of this episode, I think we'll be about 3 episodes into Peacemaker.
What I will say with Peacemaker is heard my husband listening to somebody talking. I couldn't actually see whoever it was that was talking, but apparently whoever was there, like the first season, loved having the dance move situation after they got it down. And the folks who were there for season 2 were just like, I am a little bit confused, but they also got into it. Also, side note, when I am talking about, like, I couldn't see who it is that he was talking about, I am definitely making John Cena jokes, so
Yes, I caught that.
ba-ba-da-ba. Just checking.
Real quick thing. So, for anybody who watched season 1 of Peacemaker, what some people don't realize is the opening dance number telegraphs the entire season.
Really?
Yeah. So that season involved alien invasion and stuff like that, and a lot of the dancing and the way it was like choreographed and set up was intentionally supposed to be apparently reminiscent of that old video game with the where it was like just like the little digital tanks moving back and forth, and the alien ships dropping down, they'd be shooting up at them.
Wait, Galaga?
So yeah, Galaga. It was a Galaga reference, part of the dancing, and then also certain things that they did with the dancing telegraphed like characters who were going to die, characters who were going to live, and stuff like that. And everyone who's seen season 2's opening, season 1 was "Do You Want to Taste It" by Wing
Yes.
Wham, I believe it was.
Do
And
you
the
really
new
want yes.
season, God, what was the name of it? I think it's Lord. Got it right here, actually. Lord by
Mhm.
Foxy Shazam. That's
Fox
the new
okay.
opening. And considering the, dancing that they're doing and stuff like that, particularly with stuff with, like, Peacemaker and Hardock, I'm getting the assumption that it's telegraphing what's happening this season as well.
Wow.
But
I will
most of
tell
us will
you
not figure out what it is until the season's over and we can start analyzing the dancing with the entire season.
I will tell you that husband guy mostly spent a bunch of season 1 talking about how there was a very specific kind of hiccup in part of the dance scene at one point. I'm not going to go into it, but there was a part that season 1 dance scene he's just like, they're out of sync here. So we'll see how that happens. But
I mean, to
you
be
know,
fair, it's like you've got a group of people, many of who are quite old and many of who do not dance regularly, so I'd give them a little slack on that.
no. It's not like the dancing. There's actually like a very specific like frame thing that's out of sync that just like drives him nuts. I'm not
Oh,
sure what it is
that was probably
exactly.
intentional.
I'm sure it is. So now I'm gonna have to sit there and be like, hey, go look at this thing. I don't have anything as involved and esoteric quite as the Peacemaker opening dance moves. But what I do have is like this whole weird reaction to Cracker Barrel going minimalist, as though every millennial does not remember how lit it was to go to Pizza Hut to go get our personal pan pizza there, like with the buffet and everything. But like now you can't tell if a place is supposed to be like a Pizza Hut or a McDonald's or anything else. Like Taco Bell used to be cool and colorful as hell, and now it's just all the corporate fast food box where they can be sure that they can sell the building later without too much work. And now people are mad about Cracker Barrel because the barrel is the actual logo and they don't have
And they got rid of the
the one
cracker on
dude.
it too.
I did not say that. I did not say
I did
that.
though.
That's fine. You're light skinned enough to get away with that. Me, I
I,
sound
I'm
like
s- I'm still a person of color, so it's like I'm
that's what
Latino.
I'm
So
saying. Like you're light skinned enough to get away with that, but if I say that, then
yeah,
everyone's
but
gonna be
I'm
all up in arms.
I'm half European, so it's like that probably gives me a little bit of leeway.
Little bit, if anybody wants to come at you and be like, "Look, I'm Spanish, I don't know what to tell you."
Yeah.
But
But I
yeah,
mean,
no, people are getting so
honestly,
upset about this for absolutely no
the thing
reason.
that's the thing that just always makes me laugh about these people get pissed off about a logo change, like when they change the Land O'Lake butter and all that stuff. I'm like, really, how much in your life did you think about the Land O'Lake butter or the Cracker Barrel logo or
It
like
wasn't
I
even
understand
all of the Cracker Barrels that they were doing it at. It was only like a few of them that
it's
they were
like
testing it
get it,
out.
change is never easy, there's times where they change something and it bothers me. A superhero's costume gets changed even slightly, and I'm like, I don't know if that works. Like they took away Superman's underpants, and now the strongman torso look just doesn't look right. So it's like just like they're like, oh, this is the woke agenda. I'm like, I don't
People
know if it's that
exist.
deep. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of that. So, on that front, though, we do need to go ahead and make sure that we have gotten our very important Soros checks. So, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back to Up Your Nerd Cred. Welcome back to Up Your Nerd Cred. So, we're going to be talking about this week the Sentinels.
Bum bum
Now,
bum.
to a certain extent, if you're just like very new to the MCU, or just the Marvelverse in general, you're just like, who are the Sentinels? Well, let's first start with who they were created by. They were created by, of course, our dream team, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, and they
I wonder if
first,
they would call themselves that.
if no, because neither of them are with us now. That would be kind of weird if they did. But yeah, I know. But Jack Kirby also got into kind of a like I'm tired of Marvel situation. So it depends on what time that we're talking about. If we're talking about the time frame that Stan and Jack were out there drawing comics and they were doing things, but either way,
Well, I mean, there's always been talk about like there's a little bit of drama back there. But
I mean,
anyways,
there's
back
always
to
a little bit of drama. Back to though, Sentinels as characters, generally speaking, have exactly one job: hunt
oh, and
down.
they also appeared in X-Men 14. We skipped that part.
Oh, I apologize. Yes, they did show up first in X-Men number 14 in November 1965. This is the first time that we saw them. But like I said, as characters, they have pretty much one job: hunt down mutants. Are they hunting down mutants for capture or kill? That depends on their programmer's needs, but ultimately, the Sentinels are there for one job, and it is not a pleasant one.
Yeah, it's like I wouldn't call them characters. They're more tools and plot devices a lot of the time. They don't only become characters with very distinctive storylines.
Fair.
But we'll get into that in a bit.
Yeah. So I would like to also make a point of saying that they're not like this isn't a situation in which we have mutants with different powers and power levels, and therefore a responsible police force is looking for the safest way to stop a mutant that might be committing crimes. No, they're fully there because Homo sapiens got really, really annoyed at the existence of Homo sapiens superior.
Yeah, it was a very drastic escalation of the conflict.
Yeah. Sentinels aren't even just like an opportunity to actively harm people deemed as the other. They're specifically designed to hunt the people who possess the X gene. And there's been a lot of money and a lot of technology that was poured into streamlining them.
And we should note that in many stories, it's government funded. So take
Mm.
that as you will.
I am not necessarily going to say that the Sentinels might have any kind of real world parallels, mostly because the Sentinels are actual machines that were created to do things and did not have a choice in the matter. I am not suggesting that any kind of humans who sign out to do things did not have a choice. Anyway, Sentinels as machines in general were first created by Bolivar Trask. He was an anthropologist who saw the increase of mutant kind and decided that it was an active threat to humankind and decided to put his brilliance into attacking them instead of trying to live his own life.
And for those curious, you may have seen Bolivar Trask in the X-Men movie Days of Future Past, played by Peter Dinklage.
Peter Dinklage made the character honestly a little bit less of a jerk than I generally associate with Bolivar, but, that's not saying a lot because,
Yeah, well, Dinklage always has the ability to make even, like, douchebags just kinda sympathetic, but,
yeah.
yeah, the comic version of him was a lot more purely bigotry driven, like, "I hate mutants and they need to be wiped out."
Okay, yeah, but fun fact, both of his kids were mutants, so Larry
Irony.
Trask was a precog, and his dad decided that it would be better to just go ahead and, like, block his abilities, specifically, and the memories thereof, and Tanya
His
Trask
plot was
was
kind of adapted into X-Men 2 with, Reverend Stryker slash Colonel Stryker and his son who was essentially Mastermind.
we can't talk about that part yet, but also his other child, Tanya, was a time traveler. And this is something that they discovered when she popped out of where it is that she had been and just kind of got lost in time, kind of hanging out in like the time ether until Rachel Summers was actually able to rescue her.
With how many time travelers get lost in the time stream, I wonder if they just keep running into each other, just, like, passing.
I mean, to a certain extent, time travelers passing each other in this stream, like that whole world line, like collapse
You
and
think
like
Tanya saw
separation.
Bishop drop Cable in
I,
X-Men 97?
I feel like Tanya's actually probably seen a bunch of stuff, mostly because Rachel Summers is the one who actually like pulled her out of the whole like time stream thing. So I'm trying to
Mhm.
figure out just like it's kind of like you have the person who is hanging out watching the end of the universe because they're trapped in the event horizon. Like, if you're just hanging out with time, unable to, like, kind of move and do anything except for hang out in time, I wonder how much stuff you can actually see by
Uh,
virtue of that. So, completely separate, though, from Tanya going and living actually her most mutant life later, I believe that she actually has her own madam situation that she ends up sinister. What is this lady's name? Anyway, what's really funny though, Tanya is less as the fact that her brother Larry decided that despite the fact that he was his own a bit of precog and such, that he wanted to follow in
oh, Madam
Daddy's
Sanctity,
footsteps.
that's it.
Sanctity,
Sorry.
yes, that was that lady's name. Thank you.
Yeah, but you were saying.
Yes. So Larry followed in Daddy's footsteps and made stronger versions of Sentinels, and then apparently somehow decided that he wanted to go ahead and ask the leopards to eat his own face because he told the Sentinels to take out all of the mutants, and if he is in fact actually a mutant, oopsie,
Oopsie.
turns out, yeah, no, that's a problem.
And nothing of value was lost.
Yeah, yeah. What's really interesting too is the fact that like as far as like people who are just like sitting there just like fully registering for like the leopards eating people's faces party, Larry's own sentinels like specifically turned on him. And he's like,
Well, that's just kind of a thing that always happens with the Sentinels every single time. They will eventually turn against their masters, largely because of the fact that their programming will eventually start to correlate the connection between humans and mutants, and that there's not really that much of a difference because there's always genetic potential in humans to evolve like mutants have. So
true.
eventually, this was actually a major plot in the original X-Men 90 from the 90s, where the first season ended with the Sentinels going, mutants are humans, therefore humans must be eliminated like mutants must be.
Huh.
And that's something that just keeps happening, and yet for some reason the humans keep bringing back the Sentinels and wondering what went wrong.
It's because they haven't quite actually sat there and spent 2.5 minutes realizing that the mutants are not out to get humanity. Mutants are
Yeah,
not out
well,
to get humanity like
some of them
that.
are. I mean, we
The
have to admit there
vast
are some of
majority
them,
of
but
mutants are not out to get humanity like that, okay? And honestly, they probably like the mutants who are
yeah,
out to get humanity like that are probably the ones who are really mad about some of the shenanigans that
yeah.
humanity pulled in the first place. So like,
Yeah, it also this also begs into the question of, like, AI technology in
mm,
the most sci-fi sense of it, because usually when the Sentinels turn against it's because they are AI programs with they're programmed by humanity to hate mutants, and then you've got the cases of the ones where they actually gain real sentience.
mm-hmm.
And then we have the, we'll talk about it in a bit, but the Nimrod and Bastion situations.
Well, actually, so on that list, on the Nimrod situation, I should clarify, we should clarify in general that when we are talking about the Sentinels, there are so many versions. There are more Sentinel versions than COVID versions. I'm saying this in 2025 though, so like if you are listening to this in 2027 and there's more COVID versions, I'm saying this in 2025, okay? So, like for Sentinels though, we have like for example, like the Marks 1 through 8, okay? We have the Nimrod version of the Days of Future Past and Fall of X fame. We've got the
This is
Prime
the Sentinel of the future.
We've got the Prime Sentinels, we've got the Wild Sentinels, we've got Bio Sentinels, we've got Stark Sentinels.
Yeah,
Honestly,
there's so many different versions that have happened over the years. I mean, we have, like you said, the original Mark 1 through 8, which is technically just the original versions of automated, robotic, capture and destroy, arrest version. So sometimes they'll capture them and experiment on, sometimes they were set out to kill entirely. Then you have the Nimrod versions, which are the more super advanced from the future. These are sent back in time to cause destruction and death.
mhm,
The Prime Sentinels
Terminator
from
style.
yeah. Then you got the Prime Sentinels, which were the result of Bastion,
Mhm.
who is a humanoid mutant sentinel sort of thing. He's a sentinel, but he's like a more advanced version that became more bio slash technological. So he's kind of like Nimrod in a more advanced state.
I'm sorry, did the Sentinels just sit there and hack their way into becoming cyborgs now?
I mean, kind of, but also humanity kept messing with shit.
Eh,
So
fair.
Bastion created the Prime Sentinels, which are essentially real humans who are infected with a nano virus that transforms them into sentinels. We've seen this version in X-Men 97 during the first season, so I recommend watching that. It's not exactly how it was in the comics, but it's close enough.
This seems
Uh
remarkably similar to Cybermen.
yeah. Then you get the Wild Sentinels that were instituted by Bolivar Trask's nephew, I believe, who was just an orthodontist, with the help of Cassandra Nova, Professor Xavier's alien baby womb twin clone monster sister.
See, now if you've only watched Deadpool and Wolverine, you're gonna find out that the cinematic universes are leaving out a whole bunch of stuff about
Oh,
Cassandra.
yeah. Cassandra, they had to streamline for Deadpool and Wolverine because that's seriously an entire, just like 20-minute exposition dump to explain her backstory. Yeah, then you've got the Bio Sentinels. The Stark Sentinels were the kind of the result of, long story short, the Krakoa era fall. There was an organization called Orcus, and they took over Tony's company with the help of a douchebag billionaire who was pissed because he didn't get to terraform Mars first. And
Oh,
they
I'm
created a
sorry.
bunch of Sentinels
There
using Stark
are
technology.
several douchebag billionaires that we have who are probably gonna be mad that they don't get to terraform Mars
Oh, yeah,
first,
but the
so
mutants beat him too at first, so
okay.
yeah, but,
Well,
yeah, there's the Stark Sentinels, which technically are Tony Stark's kind of fault because it is his technology,
mhm,
and there's so many other versions. There's, like, the One Sentinels, which were created by the government to be piloted by humans a la Voltron style,
okay,
and, then there's just, like, the Omega Sentinel,
mhm.
who is a former X-Men ally that kinda got corrupted. The Nimrod that was not quite a full sentinel, but also human with it's a sentinel with a human brain. So there's a lot. There's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't even talk about, like, the master and, like, the mother mold or anything like that. Like,
Oh yeah.
there's so many different Sentinel versions. It's a little bit ridiculous. And again, like the whole conceit originally started out as just like, let's go ahead and hunt down the mutants. And there's a lot to a certain extent that goes on with that. And I may have to say that like I did say that Cap was like the team up tramp, but considering the number of Sentinel changes, I may have to give like the tramp marker to Sentinels instead. But
Is it really a tramp thing if they're just being rebuilt?
I don't
Because
know how many.
it's not like they're single person jumping from thing to thing. It's literally like they get destroyed and the humans decide to build a bigger and better version.
You know what? You are right because Doomsday is not a tramp, and that means that Captain America still remains the biggest tramp. Yay! But let's cycle back a little bit before AM tries to ask me more about Captain America's team ups. And I really want to take a bit more time to talk about like Days of Future Past, okay? And not just because it'll be really interesting to see what they do with Kitty Pryde when the Fox universes merges with the sort of proper universe. But Days of Future Past, which was a remarkable enough series to actually get a spin-off, like as generally speaking, it's a fairly famous story as it is. It got a
Mhm.
movie and fun fact, it actually has a bit of resemblance to Day of the Daleks, a Doctor Who with like our third Doctor, in which, there's this like, oh, there is a space where like, the universe is weird and the Doctor's like dealt with like some weird time travels, and there's an alternate future in which the Daleks have taken over, they've enslaved everybody, and they have to figure out how to get back to the place where they can figure out how to like stop the Daleks from taking over and like keep the universe from turning into that. And so tell me about Days of
Yeah.
Future Past though.
All right. So, quick thing with the Doctor Who reference, I wouldn't be surprised because was this like the original Doctor Who, like
Oh
the
yeah,
old
no,
black and
this
white?
is John
Yeah.
Pertwee.
So Chris Claremont, and Chris Claremont was notorious for enjoying British programming.
Hmm.
For example, the Hellfire Club was designed after an episode of the British Avengers, not to be
Oh,
confused with our superhero team, but a British spy duo
we do
who
not
took
talk
place in
about the
the.
movie that was remade, by the way.
I was talking about the show, not that movie.
Correct.
We were not going to acknowledge that movie until you brought it up,
Make
but
sure that people know
we were not
what
going
it
to.
is that they're
It had
looking
nothing to
for.
do. That movie had
I
nothing
want
to do with what we were discussing.
I want to make sure that people
But
are googling the correct things.
so I wouldn't be surprised if Chris Claremont had used that. For the people who are unfamiliar and or who've seen only the X-Men 92 series or the X-Men Days of Future Past movie, the
Hmm.
comics version takes a much bigger change to what other adaptations did.
Putting
So
it mildly.
in the original story, it focused on a team of mutants who were unfortunately being forced into an existing concentration camp. These were a handful of the remaining X-Men. So we had Magneto, Wolverine, Kitty Pryde, now known as Kate Pryde,
Hmm.
Pietro Rasputin, aka Colossus, Storm, and at the time, the mysterious Rachel Summers with her husband Franklin Richards, the son of Mr. Fantastic and Sue Storm. Rachel would eventually be revealed to be Jean Grey and Cyclops' daughter, Rachel
Yeah.
Summers, and they had realized that the timeline had gone to hell after the assassination of one Senator Robert E. Kelly.
Mm,
Senator
Senator
Kelly, for
Kelly.
those of you who are only familiar with the movies, Kelly appeared in the first X-Men movie and was killed by Magneto after he turned him into a very unstable mutant. But in the comics, he was a very stringent anti-mutant senator who was actively campaigning for the presidency and to basically wipe out mutants by any means possible.
Yeah, we don't want to have these people who are living in our society and existing in a society like everybody else. We can't have these strange, unusual people who are not exactly like us in our society. Anyway, please continue.
Topical.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, me neither. I don't know why I said that. But yeah, so they realized that Senator Kelly's death was when the Sentinel program really got kicked into high gear.
Hmm.
And as a result of his murder, because he was assassinated in the 80s, and
Hmm.
now thanks to the floating timeline, it's an ambiguous time period that he was murdered in. Because of the fact that he was assassinated, the Sentinel program got kicked into hard gear. The Sentinels started taking over the United States. They started to segregate humans and mutants to where, like, mutants were put into basically concentration camps. Many of
Mm.
them were murdered, and then there were the ones who like could be potential mutants who were targeted, and then the flatline humans were allowed to essentially keep living their normal lives, but it was in a very like apocalyptic type of timeline.
So, like, as long as you keep your head down and don't possibly have any kind of connection
Essentially.
to any of these mutant types, then you can
Yeah.
possibly be okay. Okay.
Essentially.
It's
Yeah, it's
not
like
topical, guys. It's not
topical,
topical.
not topical at all. But they realized that they needed to stop this from happening. What happened was, now this is where like part of the big changes start happening from for out of their adaptations.
Hmm.
Because in X-Men the Animated Series, they made it to be Bishop who took this role. And Days
Bishop,
of Future Oh,
by the way, has the very cool like it scar over his face
yeah,
because he very specifically went through it. And I'm gonna let you finish.
yeah. So, Bishop in X-Men 97, like I said, it was Bishop who was put into this role that I'm gonna, explain. In
A
the X-Men
big
97
black
movie.
man with a scar on his face because people decided that they want to make sure that the mutants were very well labeled. Please continue. I'm sorry.
Weren't you gonna let me finish?
I apologize. I
We just
apologize.
kind
I just
we just kind of repeated there a bit. So he originally took this role, but then in the X-Men adaptation movie, they gave it to who else but Wolverine because, the movie that was either Wolverine or Mystique. It was their show. But in the original story, it was Kate/Kitty Pryde who was given the big role of this story. And
mhm.
what happened was, thanks to the immense telepathic and powers of Rachel Summers, she
Mhm.
was able to send Kitty's mind, like 40-plus-year-old Kitty Pryde, back into the body of her 13-year-old self who had just recently joined the X-Men.
Okay, so in the movie, this is Kitty Pryde as played by currently Elliot Page sending Hugh Jackman back in time. However, in the
Yes.
actual series, in the comic series, it was Kitty sending her 40 something self, or no,
No,
Kitty's
not
40
Kitty.
something self was sent back to
By Rachel.
her. Rachel's sent back Katie's 40 something self to her 13
Yeah, no,
something
the
self.
Days of Future Past put Kitty Pryde into Rachel's role and somehow said that she had developed the ability to send people's mind through time, which does not correlate at all with her phasing abilities. They basically they basically kind of did a secondary mutation, which is something they did in the comics where a mutant would develop another power, sometimes related to their previous power or completely random. Emma Frost being a powerful telepath, suddenly developing diamond skin, for example.
Didn't Angel have something along that line and turn
Yeah,
into
but then they kind of later
Archangel?
revealed that it wasn't they later revealed it wasn't a secondary mutation. It was a result of Apocalypse messing with his genetics. Because
Okay, I'll take it.
they had implied that Angel had healing blood, but it was actually nanites that were inside his blood from when he had been turned into Archangel.
Okay, well, if you are going to be one of the various heralds then of the
Yeah.
apocalypse, not of Galactus, then I guess you should get like some bonuses.
Yeah, but anyway, so they sent Kitty's mind back into the past, and she worked with the X-Men at the time, which were, if I remember the story right, Wolverine, Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler, and Angel, who was visiting the team at the time. And they found out that it was the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants led by Mystique. And this was one of the first major appearances of like the full Brotherhood, because Mystique and some other characters had appeared earlier, but this was like kind of a big thing for them.
Wait,
Was
hang
Rogue at
on.
the
We've been
front?
seeing the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants for quite some time though, haven't we?
Yes, but we've had various adaptations where it's like you've got the original Magneto team, but then later on Mystique created her own variant,
Okay.
completely unrelated to Magneto. And with this one, the Brotherhood was comprised of Mystique, her wife Destiny.
Hey,
Yep. Although at the time, unfortunately, Chris Claremont could not make it overt, so they were just really good friends.
that's fine. Neptune and
Yeah.
Uranus were also
History
cousins
will say
too.
they were roommates. And then we also had the Blob
Hmm.
and another heavily coded gay couple, Avalanche and Pyro. Pyro in particular was drawn very foppish, very flamboyantly gay, but they never, again, could follow through on that. So let's just say the Brotherhood really had some LGBTQ vibes back then.
They do like trying to like, slate the whole queer community into like the
Well,
villain role,
Claremont
but
really wanted to have queer representation in the comics, but
oh no,
unfortunately, editorial would
we
not
have
allow him.
we have established
Yeah,
on more than one occasion that Claremont is absolutely sitting here making sure that all of the queers know that he's like trying to make sure that we go there. But,
yeah.
you know,
But back to the story. So the X-Men
yeah.
go up against the Brotherhood. This was also the first meeting of Nightcrawler with his mothers. He didn't know at the
Huh.
time that it was his mothers, but it was the first meeting of him, Mystique, and Destiny, essentially. And, they stopped the assassination attempt against Kelly. Kelly, unfortunately, took another, like, 30 years, I think, before he actually turned over a leaf regarding mutants, but he eventually did become a better person.
Eventually, before he died.
Yeah. And, like I say, in most adaptation, he realizes the errors of his ways. Whether it's him starting to actually sympathize with mutants when he becomes one in the movies, or him being saved by the X-Men and taking on a pro-mutant thing in the animated series, or the comics where he changed his platform to be pro-mutants and unfortunately was assassinated for his troubles.
It is absolutely wild how when somebody who is adamantly against like a certain minority group, any kind of minority group that might exist, and they spend like, I don't know, 20 minutes with that minority group and find out that the minority group person is just another human being the same way that they are, with just like their own kind of quirk. I'm like, oh, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes you can expand and be like, maybe everybody has their own kind of individuality kind of stuff that they're working on. Maybe I shouldn't like tar everybody with the same brush. Anyway, I'm so sorry. I want to make sure that
But
we are on the same page, that I am not being political at all
not
here.
at all, not at all.
No politics whatsoever. We are
Yeah.
team escape here. So the Sentinels.
But during the storyline with the Days of Future Past, the Sentinels were a major threatening factor in there because of the
Mhm.
fact that they had taken over the United States to where other countries were like not wanting to deal with the United States because fuck that shit.
Are you sure that
And
this isn't topical?
no, not remotely.
Okay.
But the thing was, even though they had stopped the assassination attempt, the comics kind of work. I mean, not always. Sometimes, it's Back to the Future rules, and sometimes it's the rules that they establish in the MCU. And
Mhm.
that's kind of what happened in Days of Future Past in the comics. They stopped the assassination attempt, but the future timeline that Rachel and Kate Pride were coming from, that continued. That did not change. The
Oh.
timeline did not get wiped for them. They did not get so eventually our beloved Rachel made her way out of that timeline, out of the Days of Future
Mhm.
Past timeline, and joined the main continuity timeline.
Okay. Well, that's something, right?
Yeah, but that the Days of Future Past thing still happened for her. It didn't get wiped away with the stop, and Sentinels from the future would sometimes come back, and we'd have like the Nimrod Sentinel attacking and stuff like that. So, and the movies kind of did the same. Brought in the Sentinel thing, and it had the similar idea that an assassination would result in the Dark Timeline. In this case, it was the murder of Bolivar Trask,
Hmm.
killing him, and also I believe killing or because I haven't seen the movie in a while. I think they also took
Nixon?
out Nixon. Did they take
I
out
want to
Nixon,
say
or
that
did
they
they just
took
take out?
Nixon out at the same time, which is
I
really
can't remember if he
interesting
was taken
because
out. They said Bolivar was the target they wanted to avoid murdering. Originally, no, Nixon was not the target because originally Mystique killed Trask in his office, and then the timeline
okay.
changed to where they were with the president.
Yes.
Yeah, so because she made one attempt to kill Trask, but got stopped by the X-Men, and then she went after them again at the White House.
Yeah, that's yes.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and the Sentinel
But at
program
the
got
same time,
introduced.
it was Mystique who was sitting there trying to make a whole just like we're going to do this thing in the movie. Again, I would like to clarify for anybody who is not clear, these cinematic universes really change and tweak and move things around a lot.
Exactly, because in the, original comic, yeah, they were trying to stand up for mutant rights in a very
Diff?
violent way. Yeah, but the thing was, with Days of Future Past, they tried to make her more of a Katniss Everdeen as opposed
Mm.
to Mystique. So, this was her killing President Snow
They got
attempt.
excited because they had Jennifer Lawrence. I
Yeah,
am
but
not telling you that they are wrong, that
Yeah,
they
but
are correct to do
unfortunately,
so, but they got
as
excited.
a result, they lost everything that made Mystique Mystique. She became a lot softer of a character and all that,
Yeah.
and they, made her Xavier's sister, and it's a whole thing. But anyways, going back to the Sentinels in that story, they were
Mhm.
introduced in the 70s, I think it was, and they were not bad, but they kind of just like these things are going to go down easy in a fight.
They
They
came
did
out
not look
in
that intimidating.
65. 65.
Yeah. Wait, no, 75, wasn't it? The movie took
65.
the first movie took place in the
This
60s. The second
the
movie took place I thought
Sentinels the Sentinels first came out in X-Men number 14, 19 in November of 1965.
no, I'm talking about the movie, not the comics.
Oh, in the movie, well, like, I know that the movie
Yeah,
was
the
set in the
movie, it was the
70s.
70s. Yeah,
Yeah.
because the first movie took place in the 60s, the second movie took place in the 70s, the third one in the 80s, the last one in the 90s, and Xavier and Magneto and Beast did not age at all.
Look, we're not talking
In
about
40
who's
years, they looked the
aging
same the entire
and
time.
the fact that Deadpool happened to make a comment about, like, these timelines are confusing because, like, are we Patrick Stewart or McAvoy? Maybe,
I just
you
still
know?
want I still want an inter-universe reason to explain how they went from McAvoy and God, what's his name?
Stewart?
No, no,
Fassbender?
McAvoy, Fassbender to Stewart and McKellen because that was a terrible aging over 10 years.
Look, sometimes people be going through it, okay? And, you
Like,
know, people
how much cocaine were they doing in the 90s? That's my question.
I mean, maybe somebody like Dorian grayed them, like, during all of the shenanigans in the six
No, no, this was like hardcore drug use, I think. I think it was hardcore drug use. But,
I mean,
anyways, then
Professor
they
X
showed
is
the
trying
future.
to stand up and walk around anyway, okay? And Eric is sitting there being real upset about the fact that, like, his boyfriend can't walk anymore because of him. So, like, there's a lot happening there. Everybody doing a lot of drugs makes actually kind of a lot more sense
I
than
could
you're
make
trying
some
to.
really inappropriate jokes right now, but I'm gonna go back to this, story that I was telling. But
Yes.
anyways, then they showed the future Sentinels, which were essentially, like, even more advanced versions of the Nimrod from the comics, because these ones
Mm-hmm.
were, like, nanotech technology who somehow were able to duplicate Mystique's shape-shifting ability, so that allows them to adapt to every single power, and it was just like, "Okay, I get it. I get what you're doing."
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a bad idea. It's an interesting idea. They probably adapted in the comics. It's, they have at a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
But it just always kind of felt weird that they were like, oh, yeah, but they got it from Mystique's DNA and they duplicated her powers. I'm like, okay.
It's worth noting, by the way, because we're sitting there talking about the Nimrod version, and most people think of Nimrod as being somebody who is very stupid. And Nimrod actually, in this specific context, is actually a full, proper biblical reference because Nimrod has actually been known as a great hunter. Biblically speaking, the fact that now Nimrod is known as somebody being who's very stupid is actually kind of like Bugs Bunny calling Elmer Fudd a Nimrod enough that most people did not realize that Bugs was referring to Elmer as a hunter, not as a stupid head, and now Nimrod means that you're stupid, but it was very much a great hunter situation, which is why the Sentinels are called Nimrod. Nobody's calling
Yeah.
them dumb. They're calling them
Yeah. Well,
hunters.
with Bugs Bunny, it was ironic calling him that. There was the irony of that because he was a Nimrod. He was an idiot, but he was also a hunter. So it's like that double edged joke. But with Nimrod in the comics, he was created under the idea of the Great Hunter concept because
Mhm.
that was his purpose. And he was the most dangerous hunter that they had at the time because of the fact that he was the most advanced one. He could adapt to powers and he could time travel too. So there's that added, like, oh shit.
Yeah,
But
there's oof.
yeah, and like I say, and Nimrod evolved. That was another thing. He was not just a stationary thing. He would evolve over time. And eventually, like I said, we got the Bastion version where the Nimrod Sentinel merged into another, like a new kind of being. Bastion, when they introduced Bastion Sentinels and the
Mhm.
Sentinel Primes, that was the storyline was interesting because it took place for years, for a couple of
Mhm.
years, where they first introduced him at the tail end of the Onslaught storyline. Well, actually,
Okay.
they introduced him before the Onslaught storyline. I take that back. They introduced him during the lead up to Onslaught as this mysterious, shady government agent guy.
Mhm.
And, Professor Xavier couldn't read his mind, and he was helping them create the new program called Operation Zero Tolerance.
Mm.
And, when the Onslaught incident happened with Professor Xavier, that gave him the allowance to start making gross steps over constitutional law and everything. So he started targeting mutants a lot harder, and he started to basically force civilians into being his soldiers. So whether or not people volunteered
I just
or
want to point out once again that this is not topical at all.
yeah, but if it were to be topical, this one's slightly different because it's implied that a lot of people did not sign up for this and did not choose to do this.
Mhm.
The implication is they were infected and
Ooh.
turned against their will. So
Mhm.
there'd be people who were just randomly turned into prime sentinels and attack the nearest mutant towards them. And it's vague on whether or not they had volunteered for the program or if they had been forced into it.
Interesting. So people are just like people could just be chilling, living their lives and existing, and it turns out that like some sort of like programming thing kicks in, and they're just like, haha, now I have to go and like kill all of the
Kill
mutants.
all mutants. That's pretty much how it kind of felt like, because there were people like you kind of felt surprised, like old women and children and stuff like that. And eventually he was given the allowance to go full attack. So at one point, he kidnapped Jubilee from Generation X and was torturing her and trying to force her to reveal the X-Men secrets.
Oh,
Meanwhile, he attacked a group of X-Men while they were flying back from a mission in Japan and implanted a bomb in Cyclops' chest. He ransacked the Xavier Institute and stole everything, all the technology, all of the furniture, everything. So the entire mansion was laid barren. Yeah,
that's
and got a hold of the Xavier protocols, which allowed him access to how to take out mutants and stuff. And, even though Bastion was eventually, like, defeated, he didn't go away for years. He was resurrected, more merged with the original Nimrod Sentinel,
mm-hmm,
and went after when Hope Summers, we've spoken about her before, the mutant messiah was born
mm-hmm.
and came back from the future. Bastion was sent to take her and he attacked her, and this was how Nightcrawler was killed because he died against Bastion trying to save Hope. Like,
Okay.
Bastion was trying to choke out Hope. Nightcrawler teleported into his arm to where his Bastion's arm was inside Nightcrawler's chest, and Nightcrawler
Oh,
teleported Hope and himself away, and Bastion's arm, and died in, or not, and Nightcrawler died in Hope's arms,
okay.
telling
Well,
her it was worth it because he believed in her.
okay. So
Yeah.
that is depressing, but there's also the part where if you want to get super duper depressing, there's
Let's get back into darker.
the Sentinels role in the destruction of not one but two different nations. And
Yep.
that first one was like the new X-Men with Grant Morrison.
Yep,
Oh.
that one was recently adapted into X-Men 97,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the attack on Genosha, which for those of you who watch the cartoon was uh the episode where Gambit was killed protecting Rogue and the Genoshans.
Mm-hmm.
So in the original story, we did not have like the party and the fun of Genosha like we did in X-Men 97. Instead, the focus of the storyline was mostly on the X-Men establishing their new status quo under
Mm-hmm.
Grant Morrison. So the school had opened up to not just being the X-Men, but actually having like a student body of children. So they had
Mm-hmm.
like dozens upon dozens of children at the school, and the X-Men were actually like teachers and working as less as superheroes and more as search and rescue, trying to be more of a team that helped people more than just being superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
They changed their look. So gone was the spandex. Instead, they were wearing black leather. And so a lot of focus was on that. But at the same time, as mentioned earlier, Cassandra Nova had located the nephew of Bolivar Trask.
Mm-hmm.
And she took him to a South American country. And from what remember, it was like she had gone there because there was a sentinel mold, master mold
Mm-hmm.
down there that had been left abandoned, but it could only be
Right.
reactivated with Trask DNA. So she took one of the remaining Trask family members and used him to turn on the Sentinels. But the thing is, these Sentinels were left in the wild and they were still kind of running. So instead of being like normal humanoid Sentinels, these things were like friggin' abominations. They were like giant spider monsters and flying roaches and stuff like that.
Okay.
And
No.
Cassandra
Mm.
Nova, yeah, but they had
I
sentinel
was like,
heads.
okay,
Yeah.
that's not making it better.
No, that's how the mutants felt. Because Cassandra Nova, she is destruction for the sake of destruction. She's just a monster. She takes pleasure in hurting and destroying. She doesn't have like a grand plan to remake the world in her image. She wants to watch it burn. And she
She knows
decided
what she's
to
about.
her biggest thing is to just fuck over her brother, Charles Xavier. And she unleashed the Sentinels on Genosha, which had been previously established as a mutant nation that
Mm-hmm.
Magneto had been given control of a few years prior. So Magneto was running the country as I wouldn't say dictator, but kind of dictator. But,
Which
the
is
thing
separate
was
from the way that he was running things in House of M, though, right?
kind of. I mean, it was just like under Magneto, Genosha was flourishing. It was not like a bad place to live for mutants.
Okay.
They had like city, they had food. So if you watched X-Men 97, the way it looked like in that episode where they're showing Nightcrawler giving the tour to Gambit and Rogue,
Mhm.
that's not too far off from how it kind of felt like Genosha was being portrayed at the time.
Okay. So Magneto and Doctor Doom have the whole, like, you will thrive and prosper in, like, my little fiefdom, and outside of that, I
Kind
could
of.
care less.
Essentially at this point, Magneto just wanted mutants to have their own nation and just not have to deal with humans.
Mhm.
He wasn't trying to take over the world. He wasn't trying to do anything. Of course, this was after he got stabbed through the heart by Wolverine, but that's near there.
Yeah.
But But the thing is, when she unleashes the Sentinels on Genosha, we just see the city being destroyed. We only get a few brief glimpses. So we get one glimpse of Magneto sitting in a wheelchair as his building is destroyed by a Prime Sentinel, and we are left to assume that he died.
Mhm.
We see Emma Frost, who had recently left Generation X and was now teaching at a school in Genosha. We watch her as her students are vaporized in front of her eyes. And although we don't see it at the time, she turns into her diamond form for the very first time as her
I
secondary
assumed.
mutation kicks in.
Yeah, that seems
And
right.
the Sentinels just burn not just the city, but the entire nation to the ground. There's nothing left. In X-Men 97, we just see the city of Genosha ruined. In the comics, the entire island was destroyed. And the only survivors were Emma Frost, who had survived thanks to her diamond form like in X-Men 97.
Mhm.
Magneto, who we did not realize had survived until a few years later, where they did an Excalibur book with him and Charles trying to kind of rebuild Genosha, but they kind
Yeah.
of didn't. And Lorna Dane Polaris, who had used her magnetic powers to protect herself, but she also had a complete mental breakdown as a result of things.
Survivor's Guild is real.
We call it survivor's guilt, but it was also like she had her magnetic powers that allowed her to kind of retain the last moments of every single person who died on the island.
That's not Magnet.
Yeah.
That's not
So,
Magnet.
there was only a handful. I mean, there might have been some more survivors, but those were like the chief ones. And yeah, the Sentinels had completely decimated the entire island and killed millions of people, and it was considered one of the largest genocides for mutants until a certain Scarlet Witch. And even then, she didn't like kill everyone; she just depowered them. But it was still considered an act of genocide. And yeah, that was the Genoshan incident, and that one haunted the mutants for years. And it
Yeah.
also jump started the souring of the relationship between the X-Men and the Avengers.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because one thing that just kept popping up was when our babies were dying, where were the Avengers? Because they weren't on Genosha. So yeah, like in the aftermath, the X-Men were one of the handful of people along with regular UN relief who were there. So like Beast and Jean Grey were actively searching for survivors along with UN relief workers, but you didn't see any other superheroes there. And then there came the second incident.
Yeah.
And this one just happened a few years ago. And as we previously discussed, for a few years, the mutants had created a new nation. And this
Mhm.
was Krakoa. And this one was also what happened to Krakoa was devastating, but in a different way. Because with this, it was not just Sentinels that attacked. So
Mhm.
during the final Hellfire Gala event, which, as previously discussed, is a big party that the mutants throw for the world, where they
Mhm.
will bring out their latest X-Men team and they will introduce new medicines and new architecture and new things to help the world become a better place.
Mhm.
But during the years, a group known as Orcus had been regularly targeting Genosha because how dare the mutants create their own nation and their own culture and their own world where they don't have to rely on humans for anything except for, just regular commerce, which they don't even need to do that for them, but they're trying to still be part of the global community. How dare
Yep.
they? And they're having the big event, and the X-Men are introducing the latest team of X-Men.
Mhm.
So the previous team, led by Cyclops and Jean Grey, had stepped down, and they had every year a vote is created.
Mhm.
So the telepaths, Jean Grey, Emma Frost, the Stepford Cuckoos, and others connect the minds of every single mutant on Earth
Mhm.
and allow them to vote for the new X-Men team. So every year, the new X-Men team was created by a vote of the Krakoan citizens. And that year, the team was comprised of, let me see, I'm trying to remember the team that was theirs. Okay, so around this time, as the gala was getting to the climax, they were introducing the new X-Men team. So the
Right.
previous team, led by Jean Grey and Cyclops, had stepped down and had allowed the mutant nation to, well, the way that it works for the X-Men during Krakoa was it was down to a vote. So the telepaths like Emma Frost, Jean Grey, the Stepford Cuckoos would combine the minds of every single mutant on the planet,
Mhm.
allowing every single Krakoan citizen to be able to cast their vote for who they thought should be part of the X-Men team for that year.
I'm sorry. Are you suggesting that there is a system in which everybody gets to vote and all of
Yep,
the votes
and
of all of the citizenship are considered?
yeah,
No
100%.
gerrymandering?
No gerrymandering possible because everyone's minds were connected. It was one of the
Seems
few
fake,
times
but
where
okay.
It was one of the few times where everybody's vote meant something. And so they put it down to the vote,
Mhm.
and I believe it was Emma Frost who announced the new team of that year, which
Mhm.
was comprised of Cannonball, former New Mutant Sam Guthrie,
Mhm.
Allison Blair, the disco pop queen Dazzler,
Hey,
Jubilee,
I love the Jubilee.
who had regained her powers and was now a firecracker all over again.
Mhm.
Prodigy, David Allister, I believe his name is, and he is a mutant who is able to mimic and remember anything that if he's around somebody, he gains all of their skills.
Okay, Taskmaster.
Frenzy, a super-powered former mutant terrorist who had become a diplomat for Krakoa.
Okay, sure. Yeah, that
Oh yeah,
works.
she had a great character development story. She was such a great character. Then we had this one was surprising because he was not a mutant, but Professor Xavier's adopted or his stepbrother, Kane Marco, the Juggernaut, was
Interesting.
made a
Wait,
member of the
I'm sorry,
X-Men.
hang on. What do you mean Juggernaut's not a mutant? I have definitely seen that man run through a whole bunch of stuff talking about I'm the Juggernaut, bitch. What do you mean? What?
Okay, so in X-Men 3, they introduced the Juggernaut and they made him a
Uh-huh.
mutant.
Right.
That was not accurate to the source material. Kane Marco was Professor Xavier's bullying, borderline psychotic stepbrother who
Mhm.
bullied him mercilessly as a child. And when they both joined the military, Kane Marco found a mystical gemstone of Cataract, I believe it was called. I can never remember how it's pronounced. And it basically connected him to a hell god who imbued him with his immense power, making him an unstoppable juggernaut.
You know what?
And
Gonna go ahead and go with the Juggernaut from the movies, mostly because of the fact that I like the
oh no,
idea of
he's much more interesting in the comics than he was in the movies. Because
really?
with oh yeah, the thing is Juggernaut was interesting because of the fact he had the powers of a demonic god, and yet he used it for petty stuff like bank robberies and shit like that because he had such limited imagination, honestly. And he just
Okay,
hated
so
his
he's
brother so
about the
much.
Red Hoods, like in the Marvel verse. Like what?
Yeah, but the thing was, he also had like interesting dynamics. Like he had a very close friendship with Banshee's brother, Black Tom Cassidy, and over the years, it's been kind of people are wondering if there's a little bit more there, you know. And the thing is, Marco at certain points has reformed. So
Mhm.
back in the early 2000s, he joined the X-Men for a few years and he had created like friendships and dynamics. And he actually became a big brother mentor to a young mutant named who was codenamed Fishboy.
I'm sorry, what was his name?
A Fishboy. I forget what his real name was, but he was this kid who just had, unfortunately, the looked like a fish and could breathe underwater. He didn't have like a very powerful thing, but Juggernaut kind of adopted him as a big brother and was like very kind and protective to him.
You know what? That's beautiful
Yeah,
for Fish
and the
Boy.
thing was, Juggernaut, kind of fell off and kind of became a little bit of a villain again. But during the Krakoa era, he started to reform and he became, a welcomed member of Krakoa to where he was allowed to live on the island. He was allowed to be part of the X-Men. There's a great scene with him and Jean Grey before the X-Men are announced and how Jean said, "I really hope you get to be a member."
Okay. You know what?
And
I respect
yeah,
that.
yeah, and then the final two members of the team were a resurrected Sync. He was a member of the New Mutants, Everett Thompson, and his
Hmm.
ability was that he had this rainbow aura that he could use to duplicate the powers of any mutants around him.
Okay, Peter Petrelli.
Yeah, but unfortunately, he was killed in like the early 2000s, trying to stop basically a school bombing.
Okay, so this is what happened with Siler as well. So
Hmm.
I'm not sure who's copying who.
But thanks to the Krakoan protocols, he got resurrected,
Hmm.
and his powers grew to where he not only was able to duplicate the powers, but he could retain them. So he basically became a godlike Omega level mutant.
Okay,
And so
so
he could have Magneto, he could have Jean, he could have Storm's powers all running through him all the time.
he did the Siler. So he changed from Peter Petrelli to Siler without eating brains.
Exactly.
Okay.
And Sync was, thanks to shenanigans, he aged a lot faster than other mutants.
Okay.
So he was also married at this point to a clone, or not clone, basically an older version of X-23, Laura Keenly. So we had two versions of Laura running around, an older, like middle-aged version and the
Hmm.
young teenager version. Everett was now about middle-aged thanks to the shenanigans that him and X-23 had to go through. And they were going to be the leaders of the team. So we had this team, X-23 slash Talon, I think that was her code name at the time, Sync, Prodigy, Frenzy, Cannonball, Dazzler, Juggernaut, and Jubilee. And just as it got announced, down comes Nimrod and kills them all.
Okay.
They were all murdered within seconds of being the official X-Men.
Yep.
And
That'll
then
do it.
he, along with Orcus and Stark Sentinels, proceeded to decimate and subjugate the mutant population. A majority of the mutants were believed to have been killed when Xavier had been forced by Nimrod and Moira McTaggart to force them through the Krakoan gates,
Hmm.
and they disappeared, and everyone assumed they had been murdered.
Okay.
And the actions of the Nimrod Sentinel caused, along with the Omega Sentinel, who was, I mentioned, a previous X-Men ally who got brainwashed into becoming a further murder bot, Krakoa fell. The nation was destroyed, and it survived in a sense, and now it exists outside of time and space with a large number of mutants who were resurrected
Hmm.
thanks to the resurrection protocols. But as far as the world is concerned right now, Krakoa is gone. There's only like a handful of mutants left, and they're now back to being persecuted again, all because of the Sentinels.
Again, not a topical subject. I don't know why you
Not at
keep
all.
suggesting it is. Who is
I
saying
haven't said a
that?
thing. I'm not saying a thing.
I don't know who keeps talking about this, but
Yeah, I mean,
what I
entire groups being subjugated by a fascist organization who believes that they don't have the rights to exist. I mean, how could that be topical at all?
mean, again, I don't know who it is who keeps trying to run around and say like the whole like X-Men storyline has like some whole like social commentary happening, but again, like I said, it's not topical. There's absolutely no parallels that we could find in our current everyday life.
None at
Dot,
all. None at all.
dot, dot. So while AM and I go and try to sort of reset our sarcasm levels, we will be back in a bit. Welcome back to our thrilling conclusion. The debuts and the premieres, the anniversaries. Oh my! Okay, realistically speaking, here's a few things that are happening in the DC and Marvel multiverses this week from August 29th to September 4th. So, what we have previously is John Johns, the Martian Manhunter, actually went ahead and quit the JLA and left Earth as of the Justice League of America number 71. There was a lot going on, and he left. That was on September 4th. And speaking also of September 4th, while that is very specifically Beyonce's birthday, it also is the birthday of our less favorite Virgo, Henry Philip McCoy, also known as Hank McCoy or Beast. He is a September 4th
Beast.
birthday. He is
Used
a
to love
Virgo.
him, and then he became a war criminal, but he's okay again. We still have the animated version. He's still delightful.
We're actually gonna have to sit down and do a whole conversation about the time that Beast went crazy because I saw that somebody posted something along the lines of Nicholas Hoult has played the most insane and worst person ever to exist, and also Lex Luthor. And I'm like, hang on, what about Beast? So do not worry, listeners. We are going to have a conversation about that man. It's gonna be important. So, yeah, Hank McCoy's birthday is a lot. There's a lot of stuff happening on September 4th, like Beyonce's birthday.
Woo
And
woo!
also my anniversary.
Happy
Yay!
anniversary, you married bitch!
Yay! But also, I feel like, AM, you have some thoughts. What's happening
Well,
this week
not
for
some
you?
thoughts. So this weekend, for those of you who are going to be in the Southern California area, I will be attending Long Beach Comic Con. Nightcrawler will be making his return,
Ooh!
and that is largely because I will be moderating my very first panel at a convention.
Ooh!
I have been on a couple panels, but this is the first one where I am moderating. And so this Sunday at 1 p.m., I will be moderating the X-Men Fans United, celebrating mutant cosplay.
Okay.
I'll be
So,
joined by several of my cosplay community friends, including London Hartsu,
mhm.
Michelle Waffle, Suzuki-chan, Gilly, and X Xavier.
Okay. And this is very specifically happening at the Long Beach Con on August 31st.
Correct. Long Beach Convention Center. The con is from August 30th through the 31st,
Mhm.
but my panel will be taking place on Sunday the 31st. If you need any information, check out my Instagram. I've got a advertisement posted on my page.
So, if you want to actually have your whole parasocial relationship with the pod validated, go to Long Beach, say hi, see what happens.
And come say hi to all of my friends, London, Michelle, Suzuki, Xavier, and Gilly.
You notice how AM makes sure that I do not make it super weird? That's because AM is the one who makes sure that I don't make things super weird. It's not always successful, but ultimately, we've come to the end of our podcast. I know. You're clearly devastated about it. How? How is it over so soon? Well, don't worry about it. Our next episode will be coming out next week. And of course, you're always welcome to listen to this episode again if that's not fast enough.
Nerd cred takes time to build.
But if you are able to memorize the stats of like baseball players or basketball players or any of the other ball players that exist, that requires you to keep track of like at most 20 years of somebody's actions on a season by season basis. This guy here knows about nearly a century of team ups and betrayals and thinly veiled social commentaries. And I am so glad that Wanda gave you shared custody of yourself.
We'll see how long that lasts. And now it's time to mention that we have an Instagram at Up Your Nerd Cred Pod. We're on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, and working on expanding our reach. If you have a burning question that you want us to discuss so you can up your nerd cred, make sure you like and subscribe, leave comments, and if we pick your comment, we'll shout you out at a discussion segment.
Also, please make sure you get your friends to like and subscribe to the pod, and your family members and the coworkers that you trust not to be weird about listening to the same podcast as you.
And good night, everybody.